So dear listeners, this video is made for you, especially for those of you who are worried about being unemployed or are unemployed already. This video is specifically to help you how to get ready in case you're unemployed or what to do if you're already unemployed. All right, this video is specially made for you with participation from Andrew. I'm sure a lot of people know you. You've been one of the most prolific and most interesting LinkedIn bloggers on the Salesforce career topics. And so I'm sure a lot of people know you, but in case people don't know you, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, sure. Happy to. So my name is Andrew. I'm currently an application engineer at Google. I focus on leveraging the Salesforce platform as well as other third-party and first-party solutions for the devices and services team. So that's Google hardware. Before my stint at Google, I started my career off actually freelancing consulting Salesforce because I realized there was such a huge demand for enterprise systems implementation development, especially on the technical side, coding and Apex, that type of thing. So that's how I kicked off my career while I was studying in Canada. Eventually, I moved to the US where I worked in consultancy for a few years as well before coming on to Google, where I've been at for almost 3 years now.
You are a very experienced developer. You worked at some of the top IT companies in the US, most prestigious IT companies. You've been with Google for 3 years now. Are you worried about being laid off?
I think we've seen a lot of layoffs across the industry the past few weeks and months, Meta, Amazon, Salesforce just this week. I think in general, there's a lot of anxiety across the industry, no matter what company about layoffs. Me personally, I think whether I get laid off or not, I think that my focus and my priorities go hand in hand, right? You're always striving to be better, improve, learn new things. And I think you benefit from those tasks, whether you're employed or not. Am I personally worried? I mean, I could be affected for sure. But, I think I'm working on, keeping up to date with my skills and trying to focus on the positive right now.
Do you have any friends, Salesforce developer friends who have been laid off?
Salesforce developers, not so much. I do have friends, at Microsoft who were laid off a few months ago. Fortunately, they did find new roles. So it is something that's happening across the industry right now. And I don't think it's something really related to performance. I think, a lot of these cuts are done across departments. They're done across different roles. So I think it's not something people should take personal. I think it's something that, might happen and, you just got to move on from it and look for the next opportunity.
Yeah, from what I've seen in the news, the tech sector has been hit hard with layoffs. The kind of layoffs that didn't even happen during the pandemic. Similar, like the travel industry was hit hard during the pandemic. It seems like right now, the tech industry is being hit hardest by the economic slowdown. But from my friends, from my acquaintances, I don't know anyone who has been laid off. So I hope it stays that way. And the data I've seen so far indicates that the economy is very strong. Despite the downturn on the stock market, or maybe even the decline in the housing prices, the national unemployment rate is going lower and lower. According to the data that was released today, it's at 3.5% national. So that's pretty low, 3.5% national unemployment rate. So for tech professionals, I think the unemployment rate must be closer to 1 or less %. And so despite this, I think there's still some worry among developers that they might be laid off. Andrew has prepared a bunch of ideas how you can recession-proof yourself, how you can prepare in case you do get affected so that you can bounce back, get a job very fast in a week or two. Okay? Andrew, so you prepared a bunch of ideas on how to recession-proof your skills. What kind of ideas do you have to share?
Yeah, sure. First, I want to touch on some points you mentioned with the economy being strong. I don't think the economy is particularly strong right now. I personally think we are headed towards a recession. And you can see the decline of, stocks lately in companies having to adjust their budgets and as a result doing a lot of layoffs. And with that 3.5% unemployment rate, I think unemployment, refers to people who are no longer actively looking for work. So I think that doesn't necessarily apply to people who are taking jobs because, they're on H-1B visa and they have 2 months to find a job or leave the country. And so a lot of people, I think, have to take jobs that just become available. It's not necessarily the jobs they want. So I think even though maybe employment numbers look like people are employed, it's not necessarily, it doesn't really reflect people taking on, let's say, part-time jobs or jobs, contract work, maybe jobs that aren't really what their career wants. Nonetheless, I think it is, a good stepping stone to find the type of job you want. And so I do have some actually points on how, you can prepare yourself for a recession, whether you're already unemployed or whether you're still employed, and how you can, prepare yourself to find really that dream opportunity, whether it's during a recession or not. So my first tip is catch up with your connections in advance. So you should already be connecting with people you know in the industry. And I think it's easier now if you're already employed because you'll be more relaxed, right? You're not rushing to find a new job. You should just connect with them, set up a call, go for coffee, find ways to connect with them and, get their insights on where the industry is going, how things are going at their company. I think it makes it easier to schedule a time too, because you can, schedule a time with them in a week's time, 2 weeks time, whatever works for them. You're not rushing them to find a spot because you need to ask them for a job very quickly. You can also practice a lot in talking with people because, it's like me and you say, when we caught up, we kind of talk about what we're doing now, how our experience in the past year, what I'm doing now at work. And I think this is a lot of good practice for future interviews because you're talking about yourself, you're talking about your projects. At the same time, you're hearing about them and you can practice asking questions, you can practice answering questions, and you can get a better idea too of if their company's hiring, what their company culture is like, and what you can expect in the market.
When you say catch up with connections, do you mean like with what kind of connections, like developer friends, developer managers?
I think anyone in the industry that you met before, really, I think it doesn't really take much to hop on a quick 20-minute call. I think people who you had a connection with before, whether through LinkedIn or ideally people you've spoken to before, then, you'll get a better response. But, you should be reaching out and saying, hey, like it's been a while, let's catch up. You probably haven't spoken to these people in a few months, maybe years. So I think, just anyone in the industry, to be honest, I think can be worthwhile talking to.
Okay. But when you catch up, don't you have to have something to talk about? Let's say I want to catch up with you, Andrew. I haven't spoken to you actually in like 2.5 years, probably. What should I, and you're a very busy guy, right? What should I tell you? Should I send you a text message?
So, I like you, right? So obviously, whenever you want to catch up, I say, sure. If some random guy messages me saying, hey, let's talk, I, probably will have a difficult time finding the time because I don't even know this guy. So that's why I think the focus should be on people you already met, you already know. They will give you the opportunity. They'll say, oh, sure, I want to know what he's up to because they're probably also, conscious about the economy, an upcoming recession, and they probably also want to, hear someone else's opinion. I consistently had people like that from LinkedIn email me and just say, hey, Andrew, I considering these offers, the startup, this big tech company, this consultancy, which one would you recommend? And we can have conversations like that. A lot of times people, I think, also want to share their experiences and want to, someone to listen. So I think it can be beneficial both ways.
Got it. And how many people would you suggest someone catches up? Do you have a number that would be good? Like 5, 10?
I think if you do it in advance, you have a lot of time. And like I said, in reality, it's practice. You practice speaking about yourself because they'll probably ask you, hey, what have you been up to the past, few weeks, months? But you can practice talking about your projects, about your work, what you've learned, and then you can reuse that in interviews. That way, when you go to an interview and you get asked the same question, it's not the first time you're answering it, right? So I would say as much as possible. All right.
If you could give a number, what would you think would be a good number to catch up with so that I know?
Sure. So I would say maybe 5 a week.
5 weeks?
5 a week. Yeah, 5 a week if you can. Obviously, you might run out of meaningful context, but yeah, I would say you should aim for 5 a week because some will probably be difficult to schedule. They might not be available that week. They might be just returning from the holidays and, have taken PTO and now they're catching up. So I think you should reach out to 5 people a week, see if they want to catch up. I think that's a very proactive way of doing things. That way, if you do end up impacted by a recession, you can reach out. It's not the first time you're speaking to them in years. It's, you've already spoken to them recently. Cool.
So if you're watching this video, we challenge you, okay? Today is January 6th. By January 15, reach out to 5 people, okay? Just one person a day, something total you can do. Next tip, very curious to hear, what is it?
Sure. So the next one is a little more specific. It's focus your personal brand on achievements and experience. So that's something I personally would do because I think that in a recession, when you have headcount coming down, when you have, headcount for 2 people to the project that normally would take 3 people to do, they're really looking for experienced people who can hit the ground running day one. If you go with the attitude or you brand yourself as someone, who's very willing to learn, who wants to learn a new technology, I don't think that's the best way to brand yourself. I think you want to focus yourself on the experience you have. It's your last project at your last job, integrate on a REST integration, for example. You want to go out there and brand yourself as the REST integration expert. You want to talk about that experience. You want to talk about that project. You want to brand yourself as an expert and leverage that to land the role. I think you also want to focus on those roles, interview for those roles specific to what you've already accomplished. You want to brand yourself as someone who's experienced and accomplished in what you're offering to the company. I think if you brand yourself as someone who's willing to learn something new or willing to learn something you don't really have much experience with, it's not going to go very well in an industry where the headcount's coming down and people are expected to do more with less.
So if I want to brand myself, let's say as a LW specialist, what should I do?
Sure. So, in your resume, for example, on top of mine, I think I have like Salesforce engineer or Salesforce developer. I would probably just add LWC Salesforce developer. Something I did also way back in the day when Lightning first came out was I made a business card and I actually made it in like as an LWC component. And then I just took a screenshot of it and printed that out because
really?
People would often ask me, you're a developer, but do you know LWC? So I said, yes, I do. Here's an example. Here's my business card. I coded this in LWC. And I think there's a link to it. Now you could probably do a QR code that takes them to the page, which you could probably publish through your sandbox. So they can say, okay, so this guy can actually put together like a simple LWC component. Let's give him a shot. So like that's one creative way of how you can approach it. I'm sure, if you're not out there giving business cards, you can probably also start a GitHub, put projects out there. So, find a way to really show your skills because your resume should be enough to show your accomplishments and what you can do. But yeah, if you're not coming from a lot of experience, but you've done a lot of trailheads, you have those certifications, then definitely you want to get a GitHub started or find a way to really showcase your talent.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, on top of it, I would suggest say, that was amazing. I love your idea about making a business card in the Salesforce Lightning design, colors, maybe the components. I would suggest writing LinkedIn posts about something new you learned, maybe your Lightning component you learned, and explain it, what features it has. Maybe you're using the Salesforce Lightning UI, where you can create like records without Apex. Keep posting interesting LinkedIn material every maybe like 10 days. Yeah, because when recruiters check your LinkedIn profile, they can see your activity and they would be able to see your posts and they will see that you're a serious Salesforce developer, that you are an LWC specialist.
For sure. And, I think when a lot of these recruiters are looking for Salesforce developers, especially, they don't really often understand what Salesforce is, right? And they don't know what these words Apex, Lightning, LWC mean. And so they're really hunting for keywords in your resume or your LinkedIn. And if they can see on your feed that you're posting about, this is how you create an LWC component, this is how you publish one, this is how you can make a record, they'll see these keywords pop up and they'll say, oh, wow, this person does look like an LWC specialist. Let's, reach out to him.
Great. Yes. All right. What's next, Andrew? What else should I do?
Sure. So my third tip, and I think this is more of a personal one, it's don't take it personal and stay positive and focused. So I think, being laid off or being impacted by a recession can hit someone hard. It can hurt your confidence. But really, most of the time we see layoffs, they're not really performance-based. If it was performance-based, you would have been fired before the layoff. So I think it can hit a lot of people hard, especially it can bring on a lot of anxiety, especially if you're dependent on your job for income. So I think something you can do is prepare these things in advance so that you have more confidence going into a job market. So you have more confidence going into interviews. So if it does happen, you're ready. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. I think if I'm impacted, I feel confident enough I could find another opportunity. I'm not particularly worried about being laid off because I do feel that I've taken the steps, to prepare myself and make myself recession proof.
Cool. And even you probably can, if you said you had some friends who were laid off and they bounced back pretty fast. How long did it take them to find a job?
Sure. So one friend was at Microsoft and they gave him 2 months to find a job. So I think he was on severance throughout that time and he ended up finding a job during the second month. Yeah. So I think that, there are definitely opportunities out there. But you definitely want to be ready because I think there are fewer opportunities than there were last year. And I think you definitely want to be on your A game for those opportunities because you'll have a lot more competition as well. But if you get a head start on preparing for these opportunities, then you'll be way ahead of, everyone else. And I think you'll really stand out.
Yeah, I think it's very nice that the companies, when they lay you off, they give you severance for a couple of months so you can use that time to land your next Salesforce job. And if you're an experienced developer, I think you can bounce back pretty fast. Just have to stay positive, do exercise, meditation. Your third tip is about being positive and being focused and not let it hurt your ego. What else should I do?
Okay. Tip number 4. I think you want to brush up on basic Salesforce and Apex context more than anything for Salesforce developers. I think when you're employed, you're primarily working with the technologies or the concept that your project uses, right? So for example, if I'm working on an LWC front end and I'm not really touching much Apex, I'm going to get rusty on, hey, how do I implement a batch class? How do I write a trigger? What's the formatting of the method name or the extension? That's an abstract class. So I think you definitely want to brush up and get a head start on those because those questions will come up. I think if you can get started on those, then you'll have a clear advantage because you will have studied them, you'll have seen them before, and you'll be in a much better advantage than someone who, goes and interviews right away and hasn't really brushed up on those. Even though they're probably very capable developer, it's just, if you haven't seen these concepts before, even though they're basic, they might hit you hard. One example, I think before once I got an email on an interview a few years ago, and they said, sure, I'm free for an interview. And they asked me, can I call you right now? And I said, sure. I felt pretty confident. But then one of the questions they asked me, was about governor limits, which is something I don't really memorize, right? It's something I just Google when I need it. So that was something that I really didn't know how to answer. So, definitely brush up on basics, on concepts, on governor limits, because they're going to come up in the interview, even though it's something that you might not work with every day.
How many DML limits per transaction?
20?
100, I think.
100? Okay. I played it safe.
But I have to check. I have to Google. I'm not sure.
Yeah, you don't know either. I know.
Yeah. That's a very good point. I don't know why, but I see people asking, like interviewers asking you these governor limit questions. These questions that typically you can Google like in half a second, but if you don't answer it, they're like, oh, do you really know Salesforce if you don't know governor limits? And so it's a good recommendation to brush up on it.
I think if you can't, like if you don't know the exact numbers, you can take something like I said, probably somewhere between 20 and 100. One time I saw someone had written code where they had a DML limit like inside a for loop. And so I thought, okay, that's that's not good, right? So I think if you can at least show that you're not going to run like over 100 DML statements in one transaction, it helps at least provide some context or, some ballpark figure.
From your experience, from what you've talked around to people, do you feel like the developer interviews are like concept-based? Or are they like live coding? Hey, show me, write me a light data table that shows all the accounts in the Salesforce org?
I think that really depends on the company. I know on our last video, I spoke about the process at Google and how it was a mix of everything. I've seen some companies that are very Salesforce focused. So let's say, look, we need a developer who can do this implementation. So they'll ask you, do you have experience with, Apex, batch classes? Prove it, writing a batch class right now. Do you have experience with triggers, writing a trigger right now?
Yes.
And you'll have other companies that focus more on, more kind of abstract concepts. So they'll be like, hey, we have a company that needs to do this. How would you define the application? How would you implement Salesforce? How would you integrate this with what REST? So you don't have to actually write the code. You just kind of say, okay, well, you have these software. You can do REST, you can use SOAP, you can use Heroku, you can use middleware. So I think it really depends on the company and what they're looking for.
Okay, so if I'm on step number 4, should I prepare for like live coding kind of exercises or both live coding and the abstract discussion based?
Both. So I think with abstract, I think those will mostly come from your experience because I think you tie it to experiences you've had before. And I think with the basic concepts, that's really one you need to, refresh because those are the ones that you kind of have to memorize. And they can be very specific and difficult to remember. But I think for the abstract questions, you can definitely apply your experience and pull from that.
Cool. And I think this leads you to your next point, your last suggestion.
And my last tip is document your work now, because if you get impacted by a recession, you're going to lose access to all your code, all your systems. And I'm not saying copy and paste your code to your personal computer because that's probably illegal. I'm saying, when you're, working on your resume or if you want to document what you did, you'll have your code accessible. So you can say, okay, let's see what I did. Oh, right. I wrote batch class because we had, we had a ton of records. So then, okay, I can write down that, I wrote a batch class that process. Let's check how many records. Let me do a quick SQL query. Oh, it was, a million records. Because if you do this, you should try to do this after you're impacted and you don't have access to the system anymore. You won't know how many records were being processed, and it could be a high number. You can also, look through your past meetings, see how you came about designing certain solutions, what the collaboration process was like, and that's something you might get asked. So tell me about your most recent project. Why did you choose the design? How did you design it? And these are things that you might not remember off the top of your head because they might have happened months, years ago, right? If you have the TED available, you're able to look through it and kind of say, have those aha moments. Right, that's how I came across it. I researched this and then I came up with this. And I did this approach and not this one because of this solution. So I think documenting things now while they're fresh on your mind, while you have access to resources is very important.
Your point is, let's document a small list of projects. How many projects do you think would be good to document? Probably 3 would be a good number, do you think?
Yeah, for sure. So I think you definitely want to focus them on achievements. So, if you just change the label name or you change the color or something, you really don't want to focus on that. You might want to group those small tasks as like, support work, where you say, oh, well, one project I worked on was support, where, we supported the existing applications and infrastructure. But yeah, I think you want to focus definitely on your maybe last 3 most projects, especially if they're impactful. If you worked on a really impactful project at another company or way before, you probably want to just include that too. But yeah, you definitely want to document as much as possible so that you can refer to it, because you never know when you'll be asked about, tell me about an integration project, tell me about an application implementation, tell me about Sales Cloud, So I think you definitely want to have at least those notes ready so you can look through them, you can scroll down, and, just get the highlights.
When I prepare these scenarios, these projects that I worked on so they can talk about it in the interview, is there a specific way that I should document my involvement, my achievements with these projects?
Sure. So I would break them into 2 parts. First part, how I came about choosing the solution. So for example, if I changed a color on the UI from blue to green, I could say we came up with the solution because we wanted our UI to be more focused on the company's branding, which has a green logo versus blue with the Salesforce's logo, right? This would, increase user adoption, make users more comfortable. And then the second part would be the impact you had. So then after, you could say, after this change, user adoption increased by 100%. It probably wasn't due to you changing the color, but maybe it got rolled out to more employees after the color. But you can definitely include that, if you're a part of that project, even if your contribution was small. So it's, why and then what happened after the impact. I think you want to focus on that.
One way also to explain your achievements is using the STAR method, the situation, task, action, result. So the situation is like, what kind of problem you're trying to fix? Why is it a problem? Maybe there's like user frustration, user confusion, and then action, T. T is like what you're trying to do. Action is how you did it. Result is what impact you had. So if you can present your achievements in this way, it'll give the listener context to your work and your impact.
Exactly. STAR method is great. And actually, yeah, that's a great template to document your projects and achievements with.
Great. I think these are great ideas to recession-proof yourself. If you're nervous right now, the best thing to do is just do these things, okay? So that in case things do happen, you're ready, you have the connections, you have the skills, you've been practicing interviewing maybe, and you can bounce back pretty fast. Anything else, Andrew, you suggest?
Sure. So one last thing that just came off the top of my mind was if you are impacted, see if you can find opportunities to maybe do pro bono Salesforce consulting. It's something I was very passionate about when I started my career. It's something I would probably also do if I was laid off. I would probably, if I was impacted tomorrow, I would probably hit up some of my old contacts in the nonprofit sector. Say, hey, I have some free time. Do you guys need any help? Maybe fixing some bugs. I don't think I would take on a whole implementation project for them, but they might just need some simple fixes to their UI, to their Apex, updating some classes. But then with that, you're able to maintain a work schedule, stay fresh with all these topics, while at the same time avoiding having a gap on your resume. So that, I think it's much better for your branding too. Going to an interview saying, hey, I was at Google, for example. I got impacted by the recession. So then I went and helped this nonprofit with their Salesforce business because I'm really looking to do impactful or meaningful work. And that's why I'm here today, because I'm looking to interview, because I also want a full-time job where I can do impactful and meaningful work. I think that looks a lot better than saying, well, I got impacted and now I'm looking for a job, right? So I think that can help your brand a lot. It'll close up a resume, a gap on your resume. You'll be doing good for a lot of these organizations too that are severely under-resourced when it comes to Salesforce developers.
And where is a good place to find these pro bono projects?
Good question. I would say maybe LinkedIn. I think if you search Google search Salesforce volunteers, you can find opportunities. I think you can definitely find a few opportunities there. I have my own network already I would reach out to, but I think if you search it, you can definitely find a lot of opportunities.
Also, another place to go to look is volunteermatch.org. It's a repository of nonprofits that are looking different kinds of help. I've seen Salesforce admin help requested by nonprofits. This was a fascinating discussion. So I hope you guys, if you heard these things, I hope you found these ideas useful. If you're worried about it, just start working on it, okay? Just don't sit around and be worried. Otherwise, that'll hurt you even more. Be proactive, okay? Being active will calm your fears, and hopefully you'll be fine. Any last wishes of advice, Andrew?
Nope, just guys, stay focused, be positive. I've had my own hard times throughout my career. It's completely normal. Don't take it personal. Keep focused on what you want, and good things will come.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for your attention. Bye-bye.
Thank you for having me. Bye.